Welcome to the Idaho Business Podcast, the only Idaho podcast focused on providing profits for Idaho people. If you love our state and love small business, you are in the right place. We interview local legends, learn business, have way too much fun doing it. You're listening to the Idaho Business Podcast with your friend, host, and all-around great guy and owner of New Clean Commercial Cleaning, Spencer Ward.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Idaho Business Podcast. We are here with owner of Fusion Fabrication here in Pocatello, Idaho, Scott Webb. Scott, say hi to everyone over in Idaho universe.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Glad to make time for you.
Yeah, we're glad to have you on the show for sure. So Scott was, he's born and raised Idaho guy, born and raised in Pocatello, went to Highland High School, left Highland High School, served in the Air Force, and then he went on to work for several different utility companies, correct?
Yeah, I went to work for a company called, it doesn't matter what they're called, but they did compliancy inspections and maintenance on utilities lines. So that's actually a fun story. I got out of the service, met my wife, kind of floated around Pocatello for a little while. And I was kind of at that point, like trying to redefine my life, getting ready to be married. And I went to breakfast with a friend of mine and kind of consoled on him a little bit, like, gosh, I need to find a career, and he's like, oh, it'll come to you, and I'm sitting at the breakfast place, and there's a guy that's got a stack of papers in front of him. And I'm kind of paying attention. There's a bunch of people that come in and sit down. And after the second or third guy, I realized he's doing interviews at this restaurant. Maybe it was convenient location, whatever. And I'm watching all these kids come in, and they look like crap. They wearing baseball hats backwards, T-shirts. These guys are going into this interview like not ready. So I look at Jim, the guy I'm having breakfast with, and I said, I wonder what job this is. And then I heard the guy say $18 an hour. And this is back in 99, 2000. And he said $18 an hour. And I said, dude, don't let that guy leave. So he's like, what are you talking about? I didn't care what job it was. I'm going to go work for this dude and make some big coin. So I haul butt to my house. I get changed. I throw on a nice shirt. And I walk in just as he's kind of looking through his papers. He's got a big stack on the left and a really small stack on the right. And I didn't have a chance to print out a resume. Every house didn't have a printer at this time. So I walked up and tapped the guy on the shoulder. I said, hi, I'm Scott Webb. He's like, hi, how are you? And he looked me up and down. And at that moment, he realized that, hey, maybe this guy is going to sit down for an interview. So I said, I don't have a resume, but I can tell you about myself. And he says, sit down. And so long story short, the guy hired me on the spot. And that started my path into not just a career, but into natural born leadership. I mean, it was just, I jumped through the ranks so quickly at this company. I eventually, was running a complete division, which is in Southern California. And that's what took me down there. So then I worked for that company for many years as a project manager. For some reason, I spoke California. So I guess they kept me down there for the majority of while I worked there. But there was a lull in that actual contracting element of utilities compliancy. So to make a long story longer, I was poached by the actual power company, Southern Cal Edison, and I was the only non-documented, and what I mean by documented, I didn't have a college degree, manager that ran the construction division. So we ran from Fresno to San Diego. So it was a pretty cool deal. Fast forward, wife and I have a couple kids. She grew up on a farm in Aramo, and she hates LA. Kids are getting ready to go to school. She's like, we need to move back home. I'm like, well, okay. I mean, I made a pretty dang good living down there, but whatever. Come home. I go to work for the site, which is INL. For those of you that don't know, they do some nuclear stuff. And I was, because of my service history and just willingness to kick butt at life, I think I got my job there. And after about 4 or 5 years, I realized it wasn't my style. Very, very methodical, very slow paced. And I'm wired. So I was always trying to find things to do. So I volunteered for a bunch of different, um, community resources, I guess that you could call it. And that kind of also fed my entrepreneurial spirit where, I was well spoken, I was a good trainer, I grasped concepts pretty quick. So um I realized the site wasn't for me. Jumped back into utilities for a little while, and then it kept me traveling extensively. I was gone for, I think, an average of 220 days a year. And then my wife started
Wow.
her company, and she said, "Come home. You need to figure something out that's local." And I helped a buddy build some railings for his house, and he's like, "Hey, dude, you should like do this." I'm like, "Okay." So I kind of tapped on somebody's shoulders that were contractors and started doing a couple little things, and I started blowing it up on the internet as much as possible. I suck at it now because I'm so busy, but that was December 2017 that I started Fusion. And now I've got two shops, 10 employees. We go from Jackson to Park City, Sun Valley. We've done some work for Tesla. We've done some work for Fraser. I mean, we've done some work for some huge companies, and it's all from just asking. Everybody's like, "How did you get this work?" I asked for it.
Hmm.
I think all the blah 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 about your history. I think what people forget is that you don't know unless you know. So tap somebody on the shoulder. When I started Fusion, every Tuesday I would call these contractors, big contractors up in Jackson, Salt Lake, in these areas. And I would just be like, "Hey, this is Scott with Fusion Fabrication. Just want to make sure that, you've got all your needs handled, or, any kind of weird things. Don't be afraid to call me when everything's falling apart, because I'm pretty good at putting things back together." So after a few Tuesdays, guys would answer the phone. "Hey, Scott, how are you?" And I knew at that point I was in their phone as either the annoying welding dude or Scott from Fusion Fabrication, which started our kind of path into getting in with some of these bigger contractors. And I think that's what's helped make my company a success, as well as hiring the right people. But I think that the old school work mentality of just communicating is starting to get lost. Everybody, and I don't mean everybody as business owners, but everybody in general. I think that we're so timid about feelings and stuff that hard conversations are hard to have, and asking people for work is maybe one of those things that is um not in our repertoire anymore. So
Exactly.
um
Exactly. Well, there's a few things I heard you say too that just it stuck out to me, and it kind of been a common thread throughout the impressive people that have been on the podcast that have just come out and talked about leadership and how they got into the business. And number one is just taking the initiative, like you did, just to sit down in front of that guy, run out, make yourself presentable, and go and get in front of him.
mhm.
So many people miss that boat because they're too busy thinking, "Oh, that's going to be super uncomfortable, going and approaching this guy just cold." And I don't want to do this. That's too hard for me. And then secondly, just going out and ask for business. And once you get going, like that's the huge thing. Like people think when you start a business, it's the fun stuff is, oh, let's get a website. Let's make that all nice and pretty. Let's get our social media going. And there's plenty of value in that. But when you just do that and just focus on that and think business is just going to come flocking to you without you having to go out and initiate some initial work like you're doing, it's hard. And that's why I think a lot of people don't make it past the first couple of years, because they're waiting for people to find them where you're out there hitting the streets and saying, "Tesla, Fraser, hey, this is me, you know Scott Webb, I'm offering these services. This is how I can provide value for you." And that's what I think, the big difference between an entrepreneur and a wantrepreneur. So I think that's huge, man. That's awesome. I love hearing that stuff.
Yeah, something you kind of jumped in there too on was, people are afraid of rejection. I think everybody's afraid of
Oh,
rejection.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
everyone
think our,
is.
our coping mechanisms are different, and I think that's what changes the there's got to be a paradigm shift at some point where, okay, I know this dude might tell me no, but it's okay to ask. And as you do it more often, you gain more confidence. Those first couple phone calls, when I was talking to Johnny Contractor up in Jackson, I'm probably all over the place, and you can hear it in my voice. Hey, whatever it is, and what I tell people when I first start working for them is I'm gonna screw up, I
Yep.
promise. But together as a team, we can figure out a fix. A big contract that we dealt with, or that we just got here a couple months ago. When I was in their boardroom with the project managers and meeting with the guys who I'm going to be eventually working for, that was my first thing. First, I took up cookies because everybody loves cookies,
Oh, yeah.
and I said, "This is all doable work." As I'm looking at piles of prints, and I said, "I can promise you one thing: I'm going to screw some of this up. Probably this, being funny, being kind of
Yeah.
like haphazardly, like,
Being yourself. That's huge.
but." That's the one thing I can promise you. I'm going to screw up. Maybe not big, hopefully not big,
Yep.
because it might cost us both money in the end.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to miss deadlines. And maybe it's just me reminding myself that we're all human. The communication aspect, I think, is where like what we were touching on earlier about just being uncomfortable and asking, it gets scary. Hard conversations are just devastating to have. When you have to tell a customer, hey, I know I was supposed to have all that stuff there Wednesday. Well, it's not going to be there. And people jumped so quickly to be like, well, it's the freaking painter's fault. I dropped it off Tuesday,
Yes.
and there's compressor went down, and this happens.
Yeah.
But I'm not going
But
to
they,
deflect to them. I'm going to
they
say I
don't.
screwed up. I could have had it there
Yep.
a week earlier, and they could have had this issue back then, and I could have been ahead of the thing. It's very rare that I've just got parts sitting in my warehouse. Oh boy, I can't wait till the Joneses project comes up, because all of their stuff's sitting right over there. It's always to the wire. It's always
Yep.
last minute stuff. And it's just, you can lose your cool and make everybody's life around you miserable, or just go with the flow and try to learn from that missed deadline or that screwed up
Yep.
weld or whatever. And then I don't know. That's kind of
I,
where where my mind is.
I like that because a lot of people and a lot of employees don't get that. The importance of, like, no one cares about excuses. I hate excuses. Don't come to me with a problem without a solution, and take ownership. Hey, it's on me, dude. I messed up. We're going to make it right. The last thing they want to hear is, hey, Joe at the painter shop did this, or, someone over, Susie over here in accounting messed up over here. So it's on them. They don't give a flying crap about any of that stuff. They just want to know, where's my product or service that you guaranteed me. And they want to see that you're going to take ownership. And that's huge. I don't know if I've ever told you, in my company, New Clean, we have our guarantee is called the "We're Not Perfect" guarantee. And we know that we're not perfect, just like you said, because that reminded me of it. And it says, if we have something, a service that's unsatisfactory, we don't fix it. If we don't contact you within an hour of you contacting us, and if we don't fix it within 24 hours, the cleaning's on us. So it's us putting our feet to the fire and letting them know, like, hey, we're not perfect. Things are going to get messed up. Garbage is going to get messed once in a while. And what other contractor is in your facility more than a janitorial service? If they're in there 5-7 days a week, yeah, 5-7 days a week, they're going to mess up. They're going to mess up once in a while. So I like that. You just got to hit it on the head and just take ownership. It's huge. I've been trying to tell my kids this lately too, because it's always Briggs' fault. It's always Jet's fault. Take ownership. People like you more when you take ownership instead of blaming everything else on all the other people. So
it's just transparency.
yeah,
It just, you leave less question about what happened. Like, hey, I screwed up. Sorry. You know, even Jeff Duffin on one of your last
Yeah.
podcasts, that was one of the things that he said to me that, or not to me, but in the podcast was, don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with the
Yep.
solution. Then tell me about the problem. And I think that is one of the things that, maybe the military instilled in me, is that adapt and overcome mentality. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, we're out of material. Okay. Then what? Is there another material similar to that
Yep.
that we have on the racks that we can use to get us by till the other material come in? And I try to inspire this thinking. Don't come to me with the problem. Come to me with the problem and then suggest a solution or two. Let me know that you've at least
Yep.
thought through the process and be like, okay, I missed that measurement. How am I going to make it up? By the way, I need more time on this job, so it's not going to get to the customer on time. So what are my options? You know,
Yeah.
and it doesn't just apply to work. It applies to every aspect of life.
That's
And
true.
you realize that your whole mindset will change and shift as you start to realize that, you know, there will always be problems. No matter
Yep.
what you do, no matter how rich you are, no matter how healthy you are, there will always be problems.
Yep. True. It's very true. I was watching this thing called Wall Street with Mark Wahlberg, and it was a little mini series, and he has multiple different companies out there. And at
Hmm.
one point during the coronavirus, and he was struggling with a bunch of stuff, he said, show me an easy business. I'll try it. Just show me an easy business. And I just, it stuck to my head because I keep thinking, like, man, I bet that business is a little easier than mine. I bet that business is easier than mine. And I think,
Yeah.
no, they all have their different issues, So, well, let's take a quick timeout. This is a good segue here to quickly time out. We forgot our sponsor in the beginning. Lookout Credit Union, people. They're throughout Southeast Idaho, from Burley all the way to Idaho Falls. These guys are locally grown Idaho credit union for the last 67 years. They've been looking out for us, and that's why they've probably facilitated their name from ISU Credit Union to Lookout Credit Union. Fantastic people to deal with. If you go down into one of their branches and you mentioned that you heard about them on the podcast, and you open up on a new account, they're going to hook you up with a free swag bag with hats, all sorts of cool stuff, just because you mentioned the podcast. So if you want to know more about that, go to the idahobusinesspodcast.com and you can click on their link right there at the homepage or on their sponsorship page. So Scott, um, we're going to go into a part 2 of this episode right now. So this is going to be called part 2 of the Scott Webb episode. So we'll continue on this way, that way.
Cool.
So Scott, you've talked about, how you've gotten to where you are. You talked about the growth that you've had, and you talked about how you did that. What do you see for your future of Fusion Fab?
Take over the world.
There you go. That's what true leaders think. That's how true leaders think, though, right there. I'll tell you.
So I realized that, the residential stuff is, and I've got some loyal contractors that call me every time they need anything out of metal. I've got 3 mobile set up. So if a piece of equipment breaks down on a shop or a job, I can bust over there and help them out. I got 2 guys that work for me that are also mechanically inclined, and it's been very diverse. So now that I've achieved some level of success, it was time to kind of reevaluate where I was and what was going on with the company. So I did this whole like spreadsheet of my very first job for my buddy to the very last job we got done. And I looked at where my highest profit margins were. And then I looked at my lowest profit margins. Okay, what affected that job? Why did we lose our butt on that job? So I kind of put a couple different buckets out, and I kind of determined that the I wouldn't say the safest, but the most profitable and sustainable work would be industrial, right? So although I'll probably never get out of residential because I've made a pretty good name for us in that realm, I'll dedicate one of my shops, my smaller shop, to do the residential and more kind of art deco kind of stuff. We do some furniture and stuff, but we'll keep that going. But jumping back to kind of how I evaluated where I'm going is industrial is more sustainable. I don't know that it's more profitable, but now I've got a project that lasts months versus a project that might last 3 or 4 days, and then I've got to cut guys loose. So from a scheduling standpoint, from a insurance and just having cars and trucks everywhere, I think you can only get so big as a residential guy. Granted, I mean, we're doing, we've got some $20+ million homes that we're a huge part of up in Jackson. It's still hit or miss. It might be, it might go dormant for 3 weeks and then they call us and say, hey, we need to do this. Gotcha. So I've been I was going to reinvent my website to kind of boast more industrial strengths. And while doing that, I started making some phone calls back to my Tuesday calls, right? So I'm starting to call companies and, hey, see somebody that owns a company at the bar or at the restaurant or something like that. I'd send them a drink or something like that. And hey, it just started getting in their ears a little bit. So when it comes time to ask for work, it's easy. We went and toured a facility from another large fabricator, and they're just, hey, we need help. And to have such a large company say, hey, Fusion Fab, can you bail us out? Not bail us out, just help us.
Sure.
Because their overhead's much bigger, and to have these little, widgets that go to this big cog. You guys want to weld these up? Heck yeah, we do.
All right, everyone, this is the end of episode 1. We're going to move this to episode 2 this upcoming Thursday. But tune in on Thursday to hear the rest of Scott Webb's awesome interview and his great advice. Adios, everyone. Have a great day.
Congratulations on spending a couple of minutes getting a little bit smarter, having some fun, and supporting the Idaho business community. If you're feeling the love, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you are.